Good afternoon. Welcome to this session, which is named Streamlining Process Excellence. The title is quite stupid, but we will talk about lifecycle management here. SAP Cloud ALM has the word lifecycle in the title. However, today it's not possible to do a real lifecycle. It's just the one-shot gun, right? You can implement, you can document the implementation, but that's it as of now. Okay, let's talk about our agenda. We will go first of all over the lifecycle concept, how we design that for SAP Cloud ALM. We will simply go through an example, which is very, very simple, so that I can do that. And then we go to the topic object versioning. And then I will hand over to my colleague, who is much better expert than me, and he will go from scope definition to project setup. Fantastic stuff. Okay, let's start with the first chapter, which is lifecycle concept. Okay, how does it look like? Right now, it's not working. Now it's working. Very good. Right now, we have just one path, and that's the implementation path. That's what right now is working in SAP Cloud ALM. So you can run your implementation project, you can document it, you can test it, you can use some functionality to manage your transports, which is absolutely not necessary from my point of view, because the documents are the most important elements in all this story. Now, implementation is just has its end. After the project is done, what do we do with the documentation? What do we do with the prepared test cases? With all the processes? So that's right now an end of the story. How cool would that be if we would have another layer which would represent our productive environment? And how cool would that be if we would have also an environment which is representing my design? And that would be even much cooler if we could hand over from one layer to the other, so that the layers are talking to each other. I have a design. In the design, I prepare my processes, I prepare my documentation, and then I bring it to the implementation. And my implementation team is just doing the implementation work, customizing, developments, and all this jazz. And while they are doing that, I am already able to create another version of my documentation, preparing the next wave of the implementation. And when I'm done with that design work, I hand it over to the implementation. And how cool would that be if afterwards, from time to time, we just go live and update the production layer? Well, all this, design, implementation, production. Design, implementation, production. In one system. We call it stages. I'm proud of the name, but no one is saying anything. Okay, good. We call it stages. Is someone missing here something on this page? But you are listening, right? Good. Some people would like to have even another layer where they would like to do maintenance work. And also this is in the concept covered. So also this will be delivered. However, not in the first version of that lifecycle concept. Okay, let's go through that lifecycle concept step by step using a very simple example. How does it look like? We have all the 3 stages. And we start with the design stage, where we can scope a process diagram, change it, so create by that the first version of the diagram, and additionally also create the description of that process. So this is representing the documentation, the most important element in Cloud ALM. Now, this is the preparation work. Every document has 3 status values. If it's released, then together with the process diagram, it could be launched to the implementation. Now, my implementation team can start working on that. Could read my documentation, what is the design of my process, and would start implementing that. You could come to the conclusion, okay, if I implement something, do I have to test it as well? Well, yes, usually you should. And we give you a possibility to even go back to the design stage, create a new test document or test case, and after it's switched to prepared, just to launch it to the implementation stage. By that, the testing can start. And after successful testing, you would launch all this into the production by launching the process together with all the relations to the production stage. And you could say, okay, that's easy, and that's right, because that's just one path. But it can get much more complex if you look at the versioning of the elements we are looking here at. We have version 1 of a process, we have version 1 of document, and version 1 of my test case, and it's all simultaneously coming to the production. Now, what happens if I change the process? I automatically create the version number 2. So the version number 2 of my diagram is now connected to the version 1 of the document and version 1 of the test case. What I can do, I can easily just, it doesn't work, just edit my document, which will automatically create version number 2 of my document. And I can work privately in my design on this document. After I've released that document, I can launch it and bring it to the implementation stage. Great, but what happens if I recognize, I did a mistake in the version 2 of my document? Well, you should know already the answer, because I would edit it, and by that create the version number 3 of my document. So it's not necessarily that everything has the same version number. You can mix the version numbers. And by that, you see, we have 3 versions of an object. That's on an example of a document in parallel. And you can enter all those data immediately. So you can look at the version number 1, which is productive. You can watch the version number 2, which has to be corrected, but it's right now in implementation. And you can easily read the new version number 3. Great. So let's go live with that after testing. Now, first of all, we have to launch it to the implementation, and right after, we launch it to the production. Are you excited? You are not excited. It's just me, right? Good. But I love that. Now, what you have seen is object versioning. Which objects will be versioned in SAP Cloud ALM? Maybe not all of them which are available. So, for example, Mustamir was showing to you tasks, requirements. That's something which is not requiring a versioning, because it's dying after it's realized, after it's closed. It stays forever in the system as a part of documentation. Someone requested something, and it has been delivered, but that's it. It doesn't require the versioning. But what requires versioning from our point of view? These are the diagrams. These are the documents. And that's for sure the manual test cases. Later on, we have also to talk about the automated test cases, but that's on another page. Cool. What will not be versioned, it's much longer from the list perspective, but that's simply what I mentioned before. That's all the requirements, all the tasks, all the user stories, all the features, and all this subtask and quality gates. Would you like to see the mock-up? How does it look like, or how will that look in next year already for documents? Because remember, documents are the most important object in Cloud ALM. Let's do that. Okay, what you see here is a mock-up of a document, but it applies to every of those three objects: diagram, test case, and document. So, if I create a document, it's in draft. And it has the status, which is initial status. What I can do is I can edit the document. I can change the status to in review and released. And that changed nothing. But the situation will dramatically change if I just save the document. I will get informed that the new version has been created. And for those who are focused on the right upper part of the document, they already see there is a visible version number for this object, for this document. It's version number 1. Now, how to create version number 2? Well, it's easy. You rework this document. But before you do that, I would like to tell you, and then I jumped over, I would like to tell you all the relations for released object can be still changed, can be still maintained. That means if I have a released document version 1, I can say, okay, my process 1 to 3 is relevant for this document. My requirement is also relevant for that. All this maintenance of the relations can be done on a closed element. Good. How do I open that? I just edit this document. And again, a draft will be created on the initial status. And if I save it, it will get version number 2. Now, a quiz. What would you like to have if you see version 1, version 2 is possible? What would you like to have as well? What? Oh, I love that. So what about jumping back to the version number 1? It's possible. Because you just drop down and you see all the versions of the document. For sure, you see that as well in the history of the document. But you can just jump and navigate to the previous version. And what would be the next wish on your Christmas list? Exactly, restore the version number 1 because I made the mistake in version number 2. And surprise, surprise, also this will be possible. And just to use the last minute before I hand over, I would like to tell you briefly what will happen in the next future when we have maintenance stage added to the 3 beautiful stages. Then concurrent editing of the same document will happen on daily basis. What about using AI to compare, to merge documents? And you are so warmly invited to our session this afternoon, 3, 2:45, to see excellent developments which happened in regards to documents and artificial intelligence. Now, how does it all impact the scoping procedure when it comes to the project? For this topic, complex topic, please welcome with me Daniel on stage.
Hey, Michael.
Good luck.
So, thank you very much. Let's give it a start. You have now seen the basic concept that's behind our lifecycle management. We want to implement cross ALM, cross multiple objects in Cloud ALM. So looking at today what we have in Cloud ALM with so it's coming. With the topic of scoping, you know we have the project scope. You heard already in sessions before, we're going to build something that's called program. So basically looking at the implementation side, we are already quite strong. So you have your project where you can orchestrate your teams, where you can have your processes in, where you can attach documents, requirements, and so on, all the workshop work you are doing. You have the programs above to orchestrate these single projects. But what is missing today, and what is key to make the concept of lifecycle management successful, is something cross your entire suite, cross your entire projects, cross your entire work. And that is what we call central scope currently. So a new environment that will basically reflect your overall scope, so everything you plan to implement in draft version. It'll have a view to see, okay, who is currently working on what, like imagining you have all your projects out there doing their work and feeding back to the central scope. And of course, it shows you still what is your backlog. So what is still on your list to do, what is still to be scoped by projects. So how should that work? And not to forget to mention, it will be the central point for entry of any kind of external systems. So you can consider your DDA there. You can consider as well all the content you get today from the best practice library, but as well your Signavio processes you can already connect there, having them already ready. For example, if you have some as-is processes or if you have already some level 3, level 4 business visions you want to utilize. So, these new environments, how do they play together? Basically, what you will start with is some initialization step. So meaning to prepare, for example, for some content you want to preload from some workshop work you already done, from some DDA work, to have that ready, to have that on hand. Second step is to do planning. So either utilizing the program to orchestrate your projects or setting up single projects that scope from your central scope. So always are referring to the central overall environment. Next thing, you do your typically project work. You do your design work, your explore phases, your fit to standard workshops, where you work in your projects and capture these. Then you are going to implementation. So you have done all your design work in regards of processes, you have attached already some requirements, you have already maybe created some business documents attached to that. You all hand it over to implementation before you then come to the go live, documenting into the central scope. And last but not least, the cycle closes with the central scope, all your documentation being ready to be picked up for another cycle. Looking at that one more level deeper. I already mentioned that it will be like a place where you can already preload processes from various sources. So just to name some here, and it can be scoped utilizing the DDA in preparation. Second topic, and that's something new. you will have the capability of orchestrating your central scope utilizing a new object that we call packages. So with these packages, you will be able, through all your processes, all your diagrams you have in your central scope, be able to give them the dimension you need. Either you say, okay, we create them via template definition we have, or we create them, like for example here, like our suite overall modules which HR, finance, and logistics. Then, next thing in the preparation, you will be able to give it a system dimension. So what is not possible in processes today will be possible with the central scope to give the processes a relation to your landscape and not to have to set up each and every diagram on its own. You will be able to utilize, for example, the solution component for quick assignments. And last but not least, with these preparation activities, you start your lifecycle. So your diagrams, as a central object of lifecycle management in the area of processes, will be then available with the first status, with the first version, in the first stage, in the design stage, ready to be picked up by projects. All these preparational steps are, of course, optional, so to say, that you can still just create a project on a plain field. Coming to that now on the next slides. With the planning, now you have maybe your program set up, you have your project set up, you take your packages you defined, like HR, like finance, like logistics, and out of these packages you decide now what to scope where. So either that's now best practice processes you initially loaded, or it's processes you already documented from an initial template. All these you will have ready on hand in your central scope, scope them into your single projects, and from there on start the project work. And with that, you have now the capability, of course, to have an overarching view, see, okay, who is working on what, which project is planning to implement, which of the diagrams, which of the processes, what is a forerunner project, defining a template, which are the following projects that utilize this template for implementation. Thinking in a broader scale of a RISE program, having your packages at hand again, you could imagine that you, for example, start with like a finance and a logistics template, rolling out, for example, to Europe first. And these already feed back to your central scope. So with the work in the projects, that will be right away visible in the central scope. Then for the next projects that are following to pick up the documentation of the previous projects. And from there it goes on. So imagine you start now with HR, finance, and then logistics to basically have your overall RISE program rollout running and have these integrated through the central scope, everybody seeing each other's work, of course having a governance and a prevention of change directly by one of the projects. So, whoa, that was not intended. Let's continue. Taking now the view back into one of the projects, we are now in the design phase. And here's where you typically review best practice projects, review your template processes, you capture requirements, you all do this in the design stage. What is not possible in Cloud ALM today, any kind of create, change, or removing these diagrams. So you're not able to really adjust your overall documentation, adjust the overall house you basically want to build. This is all done today in a separate application in authoring, not utilizing the project governance. So this is what we bring as well to the table with the central scope and with this new architecture to have like the project governance, utilizing that for changing, for documenting the changes, and for creating new diagrams. And last but not least, we plan as well to have new roles on the diagram level that can help you in documenting approval of changes of diagram. So, for example, having a diagram owner that then will have a specific role. Now, taking the next step, you are in implementation. You launched your diagrams, you launched the connected documentation to the implementation stage. This is now the place where in the project you will enrich the processes, the documentation, and of course implement accordingly. So have your configuration work, have your development work done, starting your testing and documenting all these in the context of the project. And from there, now closing the project, doing the go live, either going live out of the project with an MVP, with the first scope out of the project, or doing a big bang out of the project, having either a template project that is now feeding back into your central scope, and for other projects to be ready to pick it up, or documenting the go live of, for example, dedicated locations, dedicated countries, dedicated regions. And with that, we are now once again round the loop, where you have in the central scope your documentation, and of course can now start up again, scoping to other projects, starting new versions, of course within the project as well. If you have multiple versions, you can start these out of the project, but let's say, imagine you have now the first version documented, ready, implemented, and other projects are being capable of picking that up. That will now make the life cycle round for continuing with improvement and enrichment. And with that, thank you very much. And for more details, happy to invite you to tomorrow's session on process management, where we have a more detailed look on timeline and the topics that are ahead of us for achieving all that. Thank you very much.